Welcome to the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Bellomo, where we discuss all things estate planning and elder law, and, well, hey, anything else we want to talk about. Now, today's actually going to fall pretty well under the estate planning and elder law category. I'll explain that. I have my friend here with me, Rebecca Deming. Rebecca, how you doing today?
Jeffrey, thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm really excited. She is with a company called ProVet for Veterans Legal, and I am very excited to talk to her because I'll tell you, that is certainly not my specialty. As many of you know, I definitely punt on these cases and always refer out, so it is wonderful to get to have somebody in our arsenal that is very well versed and was introduced to us by a dear friend of mine, Molly. Molly and I go back to 2009, so I know we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But hey, before we get into the meats and potatoes today, I just want to do a quick disclaimer, just a reminder. Please do not take what you hear from this show, or any other show for that matter, to constitute legal advice. If you are looking for legal advice, please call an attorney licensed in the state that you reside in or practices in the area of law that you are looking for advice in. And after you meet with them and get advice specific to your situation, should you consider that legal advice. This show and any other show should be looked at for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. And while we might provide some really good nuggets today, please remember that every case is fact specific, so not all outcomes are the same depending on the facts. At Bellomo and Associates, we educate so that what happened to my family does not happen to yours. We offer free educational workshops on a weekly basis in the areas of estate planning or pre-planning, when we're able to plan ahead, crisis Medicaid planning, if we are in a crisis, special needs planning, if you or a loved one has special needs and we want to make sure that they can maintain their government benefits, post-death administration after the loss of a loved one, and finally, life care planning. They will help. The social workers on our team will help navigate your family through the journey and provide advice and options about aging in place, when it's time to move to other housing needs, and all kinds of wonderful stuff in the life care planning context. So if you're looking for advice, please give us a call at 717-845-5390 or check us out on the web at www.bellomoassociates.com. That is B as in boy, ELLOMO, associate spelled out with an S.com. Man, I couldn't come up with a shorter email and a domain there, could I? Anyway, so we would love to assist you with your educational matters, making sure that you're educated so that when a crisis occurs, you at least know where to turn and what your options are. So, Rebecca, nice to meet you. Tell us a little bit about ProVet and how you got into it.
Sure. So we are a law firm based in Florida, but we represent veterans nationwide and actually have some living overseas that we're able to serve.
Wow.
And so VA provides benefits to veterans and sometimes to surviving dependents of veterans. And when veterans apply for those benefits, if they don't get everything they're entitled to, we help with the appeals. And so we fight at the agency level. It's technically administrative law. And we can take it up to the board and we can take it up to the court. We're seeing more and more going up to the court recently.
Oh, really?
Because, there's just, some of it's just, anytime you get in with an administrative agency, there's going to be some human error and they're going to miss certain things, and, they don't always understand, their staff doesn't always understand how to apply the laws correctly. So we're just looking out for veterans to make sure they get the benefits that they deserve.
Awesome.
I met my husband in Afghanistan. He's a veteran. I'm not a veteran. I was with the State Department at the time.
Wow.
And when he got out of the military, I said, hey, it might be a good time for me to get accredited by VA and explore this area of law. And I like the medical side. I love helping our veterans. I've been doing this for a number of years, but the firm's been open since 2019 now.
Oh, wow. Oh, right before COVID.
Yep.
Wow. I guess when you're practiced, though, probably don't do a lot of in-office stuff, huh?
Right. Yeah, well, I have an office, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. We opened in 2021. I started doing it full time in 2019 for another law firm, and then hung my shingle in 2021. When you said right before COVID, I was thinking, wait, no, that's not right. I opened right before Afghanistan fell. That's my marker of.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you did. I didn't put that timing together. Oh,
That's my
wow.
marker of how long we've been open. Um, but yeah, no, a lot of it's not. I started off literally in a closet, a small bedroom that we were using as an extra closet space in my house, kind of converted it into an office. And then recently got office space about a year and a half ago. We got some office space, but most of our team works remotely from their homes.
Oh, that's incredible. So, just to help the listeners, I know there's some different sides of the Veterans Administration and different ways that lawyers can assist. Can you talk a little bit about specifically what you help with and how you're able to help for veterans and what it is that you're working with them on typically?
Sure. So you're right. With the VA, there's a few different sides. The most common ones that people are aware of are the Veteran Health Administration,
Right.
which is the big hospital system that gets people their care. We typically don't touch that side. I mean, I'll help. If people are getting stuck and they're already working with us, I can kind of help them figure out ways to get care approved for certain things. But what we really do is, if veterans served and something happened during service, or because of their service, they developed some kind of disability. So it could be, a very obvious disability like an amputation or something, or it could be, invisible wounds like PTSD or
Right.
acid reflux or something that's a little bit less obvious. They're entitled to a monthly benefit payment if that current disability is related to what happened in service.
Okay.
And it's based on kind of how severe it is, how much it impacts them in there's a whole schedule that, VA says, hey, if your right knee can bend this much, you get this much. And, if
Oh, wow.
your PTSD prevents you from engaging in social and occupational tasks at this level, you get 50%. If it's at this level, you get 70%. So it's very regimented, but there's a lot of kind of nuance in there to capture the right facts, to get stuff rated correctly, and to help veterans show that their disabilities are connected back to service. So when they apply for those benefits, if they think they were rated too low, or if VA says, well, hey, we don't have the records that show that your vehicle turned over in Vietnam, and so we don't know that this really happened, we'll work to kind of prove that something happened when the veteran says it happened, so they can get those benefits. And then some of those benefits will kind of transition, or there's certain benefits that survivors and family members are entitled to as well. So we'll help make sure that the veterans and their families understand kind of the full spectrum of benefits that they're entitled to.
Wow. So an original determination is made. And I know earlier you had said that typically you're on the appeal side. So there's usually a determination made. Then the veteran looks at it and goes, man, I think this is crazy. And then they reach out to you and they work with you? Okay.
Yeah, there's veteran service officers, veteran service organizations like the American Legion, Disabled American Vets, and organizations like that will help veterans. You can file on your own online, but if you want help, there are free organizations out there, and VA prohibits any representatives from charging a fee for helping with initial applications. So we usually recommend that people work with a free organization to get their initial claim filed. But then, if they're like, wait a minute, I went through, and we have one that we won recently where the veteran, I think he's like 28 years old. He went through BUDS training, which is basic underwater demolition SEAL training.
Okay.
So he went through, in Coronado, carrying logs in his head and all that stuff.
Wow.
And he's got arthritis in different joints that's similar to like a 70-year-old at age 28. He's like, well, we don't know, you didn't report that your neck hurt in service, so we don't know that your current neck injury is related to what happened in service. So we worked with some medical experts that we know, and I mean, that's just one example, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you mentioned earlier about, a truck flipping over and they don't have record of the truck flipping over. I was thinking to myself, how do you possibly prove that? Something that occurred. I mean, I guess witnesses and people who were there, but man, that's got to be hard.
Yeah. Some of it is just witnesses, kept in touch with people, or just kind of circumstantial evidence. we had one case, and we're still fighting this one, but we actually went up to Library of Congress because our veteran he served in Saudi Arabia, and he witnessed
Yeah.
a public beheading in Saudi Arabia. And he had a newspaper article about this public, but it's not in his military records because he
He wasn't beheaded. Right.
right. It's like, so it's just something he witnessed. But the only evidence was this newspaper article, and he held on to it for a long time and was like, I'll never need this, and threw it out. And so we went up to Library of Congress. We knew what dates he was in Saudi Arabia. We found the only English language newspaper from Saudi Arabia at the time, went through, date by date. And of course, it was like the last 2 weeks of his deployment or something. So we're sitting there hours and hours going through newspaper articles and finally get the article about the public beheading. And so now we've got his statements, we've got his passport stamps, we've got the newspaper article that this incident occurred.
I could not imagine witnessing that. Like, I can't even.
Yeah. Like, you're just going to town, going to market on your leave or, patrol or something. And yeah.
I cannot fathom that happens still. Like, that's, wow. Whew. Oh, crazy. Man. So I know that, well, at least I think I do. I don't know much about VA, as we were talking before. I mean, I am accredited, but I'm typically only kind of involved on the aid and attendance side, which is slightly different than what you're talking about here today. Could you explain what the difference is? I know people coming into my workshops are often asking about getting assistance from the VA on an income side to offset expenses. I assume that's different than the side that you're typically involved in, and I know you do a little bit on that too. So would you mind talking about the difference?
Yeah, so there's actually a few different areas where VA uses the term aid and attendance.
Sweet.
And so the area that we're most that we work with most often is where a veteran has disabilities. Usually they have to be 100% fully disabled. And then in addition to being 100% disabled, they need help with what VA calls activities of daily living. So ADLs, bathing, toileting, getting dressed, feeding themselves. And it could be a family member, it could be a skilled nursing assistant or something. But if they require that extra assistance, then they get what's called special monthly compensation. And so in addition to their 100% rating, they would get an extra, you think it's usually about $1,000 for there's different levels of aid and attendance.
Yep.
If they need help with skilled nursing, if they're changing catheters and doing more physical therapy type aid and attendance, then they could get a higher level of that aid and attendance level. There's another program I think people sometimes call aid and attendance that's run by the Veteran Health Administration, and that's the Family Caregiver Program. And that money doesn't go to the veteran. That money goes to the person who's taking time out of their otherwise busy life to help the veteran. Because it's administered by the Veteran Health Administration, we don't get as much insight into what they're doing when they're making the decisions. It's harder for us to track those cases, and so we kind of send something off, and then we're like waiting, but that can be another awesome source of income, especially if somebody has to take time away from their job. And then the other stuff that I think that you're involved in is more related to pension aid and attendance.
It is. Yep. You got it.
Okay. And so VA has a program, a pension program, which we don't really deal with much, but that's not, so the stuff we deal with is service-connected disabilities.
Yes.
But if a veteran is basically below the poverty level, then it's sort of like another level of Social Security or Medicaid or, whatnot. And so they can get, VA will just bridge the gap between what they do earn and that poverty level, and then we'll give a little bit of extra if they need.
Yeah. And they've made that very difficult nowadays with changing the ability not to use trusts, and you have to wait 3 years. And I mean, it's from when I was really doing it kind of quite often back in 2010 to 15, it was, they made it fairly straightforward. They made it, you're allowed to do crisis and qualify, and then they sort of closed that that little avenue. And so since then, very, very rarely, I mean, nowadays, I just recommend that they go down to the VA office in town. We have an incredible one here in our hometown. And once somebody already qualifies and meets the thresholds, it's fairly straightforward. And there's really not much you can do in crisis anymore. So it's become not really a thing that we're doing much of anymore. But the side that you do, I know zero about. So I have been positively fascinated listening to you. As far as the ratings go, the very little that I do remember from when I take my accreditation classes is that as far as a veteran is concerned, being 100% disabled kind of opens up some opportunities and some benefits and things that maybe not being 100% doesn't. Is that true? I'm talking in an area that I don't even know anything about. So
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of people that kind of shoot for 100%. You know, they may not, they may or may not qualify for it, but there are, other than, you get more money if you're 100% disabled.
That's fair.
Of course, you get more if you're 70 than if you're 30%, but with 100% disability, there's a few benefits that are federally available, and then there's some that are state, depending on what state you're in, there's some benefits that the state will provide. So the federally available benefits are access to Dependents Education Assistance Program.
Okay.
And that if you have minor children or if you have a spouse, no matter what the age of the spouse is, who wants to go to school, it's kind of like the GI Bill. I mean, it's not quite as much money as the GI Bill, but they'll pay, I think, up to 36 months.
Wow.
Not of tuition, but a lot of state universities will waive tuition if you're using this program. So it just kind of covers, you get tuition waived often, and then you get enough money to cover housing, room and board, and some books or something. So that one's a big one.
That's cool.
The other big one, and if you're total and permanent, it means VA's not going to poke at you. They're not going to make you go for reevaluations, and unless you do something to kind of trigger them to relook at something. So that, you have that kind of secure, like you can go get therapy and not worry, like, oh, as soon as if my therapist breaks through and I get better, they're going to reduce my money. So
yank it, yeah.
No, once you're 100%, you can kind of like focus on your life and do whatever you need to do to move forward. But the other benefit to being 100% total and permanent, I think, overlaps with your clientele base a little bit, is if you're 100% total and permanent for 10 years and then you pass away, your surviving spouse, minor children, or permanently disabled children, if they were disabled before 18, qualifying dependents are entitled to something called dependency indemnity compensation, which is it's not a percentage of what you got. It's kind of, I want to say it's a flat rate, but they've got kind of stages in there. Of course, nothing's super simple with the VA math.
Right.
But it's, it's about $1,200 or $1,500 a month. The first couple of years you usually get a bump up. They call it transitional assistance.
Okay.
But and if you qualify for it, you'd get that for the rest of your life.
Oh, wow.
So being 100% total and permanent is kind of like as long as the vets can hold on for another 10 years after they get that designation, it's kind of like a life insurance policy for the surviving spouses. Otherwise, if they die before that, then we have to show that the disability is somehow contributed to the cause of death.
Okay. It's funny. I don't have many horror stories or funny stories when it goes to VA, just because I don't do a lot of it, particularly lately. But the only story that I remember that I often tell in workshops is the surviving spouse of a veteran benefit on the pension side, the side that we sort of do. A client called, and I know them very well. I'd represented them for a lot of years, and she called and said, "I'm calling to inquire about the surviving spouse of a veteran benefit." And I said to the client, I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear about him passing, and I please know I'm here for you, and I'm thinking about you. I didn't have any idea. I'm so sorry." And she said, "Well, what are you talking about? He's sitting right here." I said, "Well, unless you're planning to kill him, how are we going to get the surviving spouse of a veteran benefit?" And she goes, "Oh, you mean he has to be dead?" I said, "Well, surviving spouse of a, yeah, maybe." And she laughed. She's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." I'm like, "Yeah, and please don't plan anything." She's like, "Oh, no, I wouldn't." But that's my only funny story that I have at VA. Like, I don't know exactly what she thought it was, but man, we had a good laugh because she's like, "No, I'm not going to hurt him. I promise." He was sitting there.
That's funny. But the way they write stuff, I mean, I can understand, she's like, well, yeah, I'm the spouse and I'm still alive.
And I'm
but,
alive. That's what she said. But I am alive. I said, yeah, but he's alive.
yeah. So, yeah, they have to outlive the veteran is kind of the key. But it's good. I mean, it's helpful for planning. If you're like, okay, do I need to, can we liquidate our house, or can we, how much can I give to charity before, and will my spouse still be taken care of after I die? Like those kind of questions. So I do have those conversations with clients even while the veteran's alive.
Absolutely.
The I wouldn't say the funny part, but one of the sticky parts with it is the marriage has to be a valid marriage, and they have to live together for a year before the veteran passed. Or if they were separated, it has to be no fault of the surviving spouse. So sometimes we get, I never thought I was going to get into family law situations, but I've had ones where it was like it was a common law marriage in a state that used to recognize common law marriage, and they no longer recognize common law marriage, or the marriage was overseas, or they were separated, but whose fault was it for the separation? And they were trying to work it out, but then he died while they were like. So some of those fact patterns can, you think something's going to be pretty straightforward, and then you get into like, what is a valid marriage, and were you married for, the requisite amount of time? People got married back in 1970, then they got divorced for a short period of time, and then were planning to remarry, but never finalized. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of like fact patterns that you're like, no, you actually have to be married,
right?
And it has to be recognized by the state in which you lived, and then then you've got federal law interpreting the state law on the validity of the marriage, and it can get a lot more complicated than what it appears on the surface.
Well, I didn't realize something that you just mentioned, which makes complete sense now that I'm thinking about it. But since I don't do any type of litigation, I never think about this kind of stuff. You can help veterans all over the country because the VA law is federal. But if you're working in a state and there's an issue like this, it's state law that interprets. Is that what you have to?
It is state law, or I mean, honestly, we have one where the surviving spouse is overseas, and because veterans get stationed in Germany, Italy, Japan, and they marry over there, and so yeah. So if I need to, I'll get an expert on family law in that state.
Right.
A lot of times it's easy enough to kind of just pull up the statutes and say, does Mississippi recognize common law marriage? Yes or no? And,
Wow. Well, I learned something today, Rebecca. You are far smarter than me, because there is no way that I could possibly do what you do. I do one thing, and I do it all the time, and I do it over and over again. But to open that, I mean, I know you can look it up, but that's still a lot when you're in the middle of a case trying to find out those little nuances. That's got to be stressful.
Kind of think of it as a challenge. Like, I mean, obviously, if it was a simple marriage, straightforward, they went to City Hall, or had their pastor officiate their wedding, and they were married for 30 years, like
easy.
That's pretty easy.
Textbook.
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, VA finds ways to make even textbook stuff complicated. Like, we have a client who and his wasn't based on being 100% for 10 years. His was based on service-connected cause of death. But it was very clear that he went into the hospital because of his service-connected disability, developed pneumonia, and because of his hospital stay due to his service-connected disability, and then he passed away. Well, the coroner, because of the state it's in, just wrote natural causes of death. Like, there was no question that it was murder or suicide or anything like that.
Oh, I hear you. Okay.
But the records were very clear that how he passed away, and VA's kind of like, well, we don't know, it's not on the death certificate, how do we know what and so I mean, I'm chuckling. Of course it's frustrating for the family who's just trying to get benefits for aging mother, and I'm working with the son because the widow is
distraught.
She's kind of passed this off, and but so it's just frustrating because you're like, this should be open and shut, but VA finds ways to make it complicated. Well, and we'll win it eventually. Like, I'm not worried about.
Yeah.
Obviously, as attorneys, we can't make promises. But like, based on my experience, like,
Yeah, we're going to get through this.
The law is on our side.
Yeah.
The facts are on our side. It's just a matter of like getting it in front of somebody who actually understands the laws and the facts. And
Yeah, which might take a little while. You might have to go to a certain level, like you mentioned earlier. So, I want to make sure before we run out of time that if I'm a veteran and I'm listening to this and I got a rating recently and I don't believe it's correct, like how would I find you? How would I reach out to you? What does the process look like of getting to work with you or at least talk to you?
perfect. So you can go to their website, which is www.provetlegal, PROVET legal.com. And there's a contact us tab, and you can kind of fill out our very short intake questionnaire. Just, why do you think, what conditions are you working on? What branch were you in? Name, contact information. Someone from our team will reach out and schedule a free consultation with our intake coordinator, who's going to do a deeper dive, request copies of any recent rating decisions, and then refer it to us to see whether we can open the case. And then once we open a case, VA will grant us access to the whole claim file. So sometimes we don't, we're like, we've got a good argument here, and then we get into the claim file and we're like, oh, we actually can, maybe we can't help here. Or, hey, we thought, we could get you $10,000, but we realized that VA made some mistake back in like 1976 that we're going to correct, and we're going to get you $100,000. Sometimes
Right.
it's, once you get in, you kind of find out what you're really working with. The other way, if people want to just make a phone call, our main office line is 727-339-7911.
And you had mentioned earlier, any state, even potentially if you're out of the country, you may still be able to help, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome. It's so different than what I'm used to. So I like to make sure of that because I always harp on my listeners about license in the state that you reside in. So this is very different because this is federal. So Veterans Administration is a federal program, and she'll be able to assist you all over the country. So if you need any help, please give Rebecca a call. As you can see, she's extremely knowledgeable, very good at what she does. I didn't really get to talk about who introduced us, but Molly is a dear friend. For my loyal listeners, you've heard from Molly. Molly McGrath was one of our podcast guests a while ago, and we go back to 2009. So a friend of Molly's is clearly a friend of mine, and it was an honor being able to talk to you today. And I'd like to thank my listeners for listening again and for being here with us today. Thank you for joining us on the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Bellomo. And I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Until next time, we'll see you real soon.